We are walking into one of the most important weeks for the future of both of our professional sports teams on a Monday morning. Welcome in. Glad you're here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM, and we are always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. It all gets underway later this morning in Jefferson City, where this Missouri special session will kick off, and the state of Missouri will in part decide whether or not to help fund a new stadium for the Kansas City Royals and likely upgrades at Arrowhead Stadium, although we don't really know what the Kansas City Chiefs would like to do if they found themselves with a bucket of money, courtesy of the state of Missouri. But we will find out starting today what exactly this is going to look like in Jefferson City. Now, I have spent a lot of time over the weekend watching local media, watching some of the reactions, some of the debates, some of the conversations, and they're missing one of the biggest points that needs to be made loud and clear in this discussion. I'm not picking on anybody when I say this, but I'm watching some of these local TV broadcasts and debate shows, and they're having this conversation like, so how does this work? If the state of Missouri is offering potentially 50% of the project's funding and Kansas is going to offer 70% of the project's funding, why aren't these teams running to Kansas right now? What's going on here, Bob? Explain this one further, Sally. And then, of course, these people can't explain it. I laid this out last night on my Facebook page and then also on X at Pete Mundo. So if you want to see that there, you can in written form. But I think this is the most important point that needs to be made about Kansas versus Missouri. And this is not me being pro-Missouri. It's not me being pro-Kansas. Frankly, both these teams, or I should say both these states, feel like they are getting used by the teams. And I'm a sports fan. I love what these teams bring to our region, the sense of pride that we have having both of these teams, of course, in our town. But let's be very clear on what they're doing here. They are playing these two states off of each other, trying to get the best deal possible. They're entitled to do it. There's nothing illegal about it, but it is dirty. Our region has supported both of these teams for, 50, 60 years now. So to sit here and now be at the point where they want a new ballpark and to pit these two teams against each other, yeah, it's a little dirty, okay? It is. And the states also are acting like goobers in many respects because you've got Kansas out there saying, we're just trying to do our part. We just want to keep them in the region. They never said they're leaving. And you've got Missouri, out there looking, I think, frankly, a little small in this process, being like, we don't want to lose them to Kansas. Call the bluff. See what happens, guys. If you really don't think these star bonds are worth anything, call the bluff. So anyway, when it comes to the big thing that's being overlooked and I think lost in the conversation, it's the fact that in Kansas, it's not as simple as saying, as I've heard on television over the weekend, boy, Kansas is offering 70% of the project. No, it's not. That's not what's going on here. The Chiefs and or the Royals will have to prove they can generate up to 70% of the project's funding with a reasonable star bond district. And then it would have to get approved by the Legislative Coordinating Council, which includes many state representatives and state senators. So these are people like Ty Masterson, the Senate president who we talked to last week, Chris Croft right here in Overland Park, Dan Hawkins, Speaker of the House, Dina Sykes, Senator from Johnson County as well. So they're the ones who are going to then approve or deny the proposal based on what the teams present to the state to say this is what we want our star bond district to look like, to try to generate the revenues to pay off billions of dollars in bonding. So if you're the Chiefs and you want to go after the Legends, how big does your star bond district theoretically need to be to get to a point where you're paying off the monies that you got to pay off to build the new stadium. If you're talking about 70% of a $4 billion project, give or take, you're looking at $2.5 to $3 billion in bonds. What does that have to be? All of Wyandotte? Do you have to include Doug? I don't know. Nobody knows because no one's ever seen these numbers. No one knows what these teams are looking at number-wise. Something tells me, and this is just my gut right now, that the numbers don't really work. That's why we have not seen or had any kind of star bond proposal leaked. We have not had any kind of district leaked because I think deep down they know that the star bond district would have to be so enormous to justify a project of this scope and size. You just don't have the amount of industry that you need in that specific region to generate the sales tax revenues additionally to then go pay back the star bond. I don't think they can create that. That's just my gut at this point in time. But that's how the process actually has to work here. The process is the teams would present a star bond district that has to be reasonable in nature to this body, this legislative coordinating council, and then that body will approve it or deny it. And Kansas has insisted time and time again, and key Republican leaders on this show have insisted time and time again, they're not going to be a backstop for these bonds in any way. So the numbers have to work for the state to say yes, and they have to work for the bonds to not end up as junk bonds. So if you're talking about the Legends, what does the reasonable geography of a star bond district need to look like to generate the additional sales tax revenues to pay off billions of dollars in bonding for the project? And on top of that, you have unanswered questions about maintenance costs, ingress, egress improvements. Who handles that? Department of Transportation, the teams, theoretically Wyandotte or Johnson County. No one really knows. So Missouri, to me, this week is acting a little bit rushed when it doesn't necessarily need to be. But we've got this deadline for the end of the month from the star bonds for Kansas, and Kansas insists as of now they're not extending them. Now, we also heard, if you listen to this show, Ty Masterson, the Kansas Senate president, say last week that when it comes to extending the star bond offer for one more year, they can do that up to the end of this month, but they don't intend to do it. They don't plan to do that. So if Missouri comes out of the special session and they don't have a deal on the table for the Chiefs and the Royals, you know and I know what's going to happen, right? The teams are going to go back to Kansas and say, hey, can you guys extend this offer one more year? And at that point, the state of Kansas has got to realize what's going on here. They're being played. They're being used. I mean, I already think that to begin with in part, but if the teams come back to Kansas in the next couple of weeks, if Missouri doesn't get its job done and doesn't do what the teams want, and they say, can you extend the offer? At some point, Kansas has to look at itself in the mirror and have some self-respect here, John.
Well, remember when Facebook used to have relationship status right up front there?
Yes.
It's complicated, right?
Yes.
Kansas and the Royals, it's complicated.
Or to use another Facebook relationship example here, Kansas could just identify itself as the side chick because that's all they are here in this game. They're the side girl, okay? And they're being played as the side piece. Except they're not being showered in gifts that usually the side piece ends up getting a little bit.
So say arm candy qualifies for a little better.
So that's where we are going into this today. Joe Nicola is a Missouri State Senator from Independence. He's driving down to Jeff City right now. He's going to be on the show coming up at 8:30 this morning. So we are going to have this thing covered wall to wall. Our buddy Scott Fawn from the Missouri Times will be here at 9:15 as well. So we're setting the stage for what is going to be potentially a historic week that will help determine the future of these two teams in the Kansas City region. 913-408-7957 is how you join the show on KCMO Talk Radio. And I know some of you are like, oh, my gosh, here we go again. I can't control the news cycle, man. I can't do it. All we can do is cover it, and this thing is going to be moving a mile a minute. I promise you it's going to be happening fast this week, and there are going to be a lot of twists and turns. And we will have it covered, I promise you, better than most of the others here in Kansas City, if not all of the others. I'm confident in that. We are going to have the best coverage of this whole deal all week long here on KCMO, and that's why you got to stream us on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Coming up, we'll get to you, but also big news for one of those two teams that we will have to share with you and get some insight from the great Mark Van Sickle coming up on KCMO Talk Radio. Text line as we get set for the special session today in Jefferson City. I know Clark Hunt's a billionaire. I know that he could spend just one of his billions and throw it at a stadium on the Missouri or Kansas side. This thing still feels totally ridiculous to me, Pete, that taxpayers could be footing any part of the bill. Let them go to Kansas if they want to go to another state if they want to. I don't know how many Missourians are actually feeling that way right now. I mean, anecdotally, if it's a pride thing for you on the Missouri side to keep these two teams there, or do you draw the line in the sand and say enough's enough? I'm not going to do it. It sounds like a lot of the more conservative members of the General Assembly and the Senate are not going to vote to go ahead with this deal for the Chiefs and the Royals. But we'll get to more of that coming up. Dave is on the Kansas side in Overland Park. Hey, Dave, good morning. You're on KCMO.
Yeah, hi, Pete. You know, it amazes me how the taxpayers and all the politicians bow down before Jon Stewart and the Chiefs. And I understand the Chiefs are a good team, but the Royals are a non-performing asset. And it just amazes me how they bow down before these billionaires willing to give them our tax money. And one man, John Sherman, caused this whole mess, all the stuff in Overland Park and building the stadium there. Just one man. It's amazing how one guy can cause so much trouble, and I really don't appreciate it at all.
Well, I don't know if you can put it all on Sherman, but certainly he got the ball rolling. The reality is the lease at the Truman Sports Complex ends in 2031, so they've got to figure out what the future holds. And if Jackson County had voted in favor of the sales tax extension 1 year ago, who knows if we'd be even in this situation right now, you know?
That's true. It just bothers me that you got some of these super, super rich people that have everybody in both states just scrambling and going around the clock trying to figure things out when they can just stay where they're at, renew the lease, do whatever. It just amazes me that a couple of big businessmen can do all this to the people, and that's just kind of how I feel right now.
Well, you're not alone in feeling that way, you know, because these counties around Kansas City have obviously spent billions of dollars over the decades supporting these two teams, and now it feels like everyone's got to basically bend over for them and offer them the best deal possible, because if not, who knows what happens. It's certainly not a good feeling if you're an average Joe fan, Dave.
Thank you, Pete.
I appreciate you, man, and we're going to cover this deal. But you know what? If you're on the Kansas side, you've got representatives who obviously are going to be in charge of potentially approving any kind of a star bond offer. And the best thing that you can do on the Kansas side is at least keep them honest and say, hey, if these teams want to be here, we know the star bond offer does not increase taxes. Right? Taxes don't go up with a star bond offer. What you do is you take the difference of the additional sales tax revenues in a given made-up district and use it to pay off the bonds. The key is to keep these teams honest and also keep the politicians honest in terms of how they potentially draw a star bond district. Now, Governor Mike Kehoe of Missouri was on the show on Friday, and here's part of what he had to say when he was, I think, being a little, dramatic's the wrong word, but he certainly seems to be taking the Kansas star bond offer very seriously.
I would remind your Missouri residents and Missouri listeners, as well as your elected officials, if the teams move out of the state, we get nothing. There's zero to maintain or to keep. And then we also have a sports complex that's a beautiful complex there in Jackson County with nothing in it. The visions and thought of that should be enough to let everybody know it's important to keep these businesses here in the state of Missouri.
So that was Governor Mike Kehoe on this show on Friday. If you missed that, it's up on the podcast. Search Pete Mundo, Apple, Spotify. You will find the interview there. So notice how he's talking about them, too, as businesses. He's not saying it's important we keep these franchises here. It's not important we keep these sports teams here. Mike Kehoe saying it's important we keep these businesses here. So that is how he is looking to frame this conversation going into this special session today. And we'll see how it works because he is using up a lot of political capital here. And if it totally bombs out and doesn't go anywhere, it's not going to be pretty. And he will have used a lot of political capital on this issue. Now, speaking of the Royals, big news came yesterday that the Kansas City Royals are calling up slugger Jack Caglianone, one of the top prospects in Major League Baseball. He's got 15 home runs and 56 RBI in 50 games between AA and AAA. So how about that on the night before the special session? I'm not saying these two things are in any way related, but I just like the coincidence that the Royals are calling up one of the top prospects in baseball because they need a little juice at the plate right now. Mark, you've been following this guy, Jack Caglianone. You fired up, my man?
Oh, yeah. Less than a year ago, he was in the College World Series with Florida, so he just ran right through it. The Royals didn't have a choice at this point. It's probably the biggest midseason call-up since Eric Hosmer, May 6, 2011.
Whoa!
And that was, I went to that game. It was a 10,000-person walk-up to sell out the crowd. And, I mean, I know the Yankees are going to be here next week, so it's probably going to be a high crowd anyway, but that is going to be a crazy environment out there.
Oh, my goodness. Now, why do I see you and others using the hashtag JACOFF for jack off?
Yes, when he hits a home run, it is a jack-off blast-off.
Oh, so is that what they call it?
They call it, yep, and his nickname, the Jackhammer, JACHAMMER. So that's something that fans can get excited about on social media. I know that I don't want to get into exit velocity and stuff like that, but he's been getting compared to Pete Alonso, your Mets guy. He's getting compared to Ohtani.
Yeah, I don't want to hear about exit velocity and jack-offs, Mark.
Aaron Judge. I mean, these guys are power hitters, and I don't want to get too excited about this guy, but, I mean, when you see names like that and their power, it's just, I don't know.
So we're going to hear Denny Matthews, the ball is deep, it is far, and there is a jack-off from Jack Caglianone. First home run of his major league career.
See, I don't think that Denny's going to do it.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to be the social media trend. I think it might be trending on Tuesday or whatever he gets his home debut.
Okay.
We'll see.
Well, I see you using that hashtag a lot, Mark. So
yeah.
I'm just trying to get a feel for what's going on here.
That's what's going to happen.
All right. Well, there you go.
Jump on board.
Jump on board. I think I'll pass. But Jack Caglianone is getting called up to the big leagues, one of the top prospects in Major League Baseball by the Royals. Coming up, we have a local prominent politician missing. We'll tell you who next. Well, this is certainly a concerning development that popped yesterday, although Tony's Kansas City had something on this a couple of days ago I'll get to momentarily. Manny Abarca, a Jackson County legislator who, of course, has been one of the most vocal critics of Frank White, interestingly, is, yes, a Democrat, but has worked with Republican Sean Smith on a lot of the key issues in Jackson County, most notably the tax assessment debacle. Well, his wife filed a missing persons report for Manny Abarca and his son. Now, this happened, and it happened on the Kansas side of the state line. KCTV5 spoke with Manny Abarca's wife, Alexis, after seeing a post from her on Facebook claiming that Abarca and their son were missing. She told KCTV5 that she last saw her son 5 days ago on Wednesday, May 28th, and last saw Abarca the following day on Thursday of last week. She says they were last together at Abarca's father's house in Shawnee, where they had met to switch vehicles. She then told KCTV5 some sort of incident happened and the police were called. KCTV attempted to reach out to the Shawnee Police Department several times since Sunday night, and they did not hear back. But after learning of the reports of a missing persons report, KCTV5 reached out to Manny Abarca, who responded with a written statement via email. Quote, "It has come to my attention that a missing persons report has been filed erroneously concerning my son and me. Please rest assured we are not missing. We are both safe and healthy." KCTV5 goes on to say it's unclear at this time if Abarca has reached out to authorities about he and his son's current whereabouts. Meanwhile, his wife tells Channel 5 she has spoken to the police multiple times, including authorities in Kansas City. She says her son is in need of medication and that she has it in her possession. In her Facebook post, Alexis says, quote, "I'm asking for help as a mother that is desperate to get her son back." I don't know what's going on here. But I do know and will share that Tony's Kansas City was ahead of the story, as he is a lot of stories. This came on Saturday from from Tony's Kansas City about Manny Abarca. Tony writes here, in the coming days, we're going to see some drama emerge regarding 1st District Jackson County legislator Manny Abarca, and none of it has anything to do with his ability to work as an elected official. Tony goes on the right here. Legislator Abarca has taken epic criticism from Democratic Party insiders for some of his bipartisan work with legislator Sean Smith. He goes on to say that we're cutting off comments on this post, but we're expecting a statement from Mr. Abarca soon, and we'll open up comments on that. Of course, he had the story last night that's shared here, Manny's statement to local media saying, "I want my son to be safe. I want my son to also be with me." That is a statement from the son's mother. So I don't know where this story ends up going. I am not going to sit here and speculate on it any further. I did send a text message to Manny Abarca, and I didn't ask him to come on the show. I just simply said, praying for your family. I hope things work out and everyone is safe and well. But it went through as a green bubble, and I know he's got an iPhone because we've texted in the past, and the bubble has been blue. So it just went through as a green bubble. I don't know what that means. If that means his phone's off, if he's got a new phone, I have no idea. But obviously, for a guy who does have political aspirations beyond being a Jackson County legislator, this is not a great twist or turn in that story. And most importantly, you hope the well-being of the children is top of everybody's priority list. I believe they have a son and a daughter, and hopefully that is going to work itself out over time, because that is just obviously the last thing you want to see when it comes to the kids. But we'll see where the story goes from here. 913-408-7957 is how you join us on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We are streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. That's how you join us. On a busy Monday morning, we are watching everything happening, of course, down in Jefferson City as well. That is where the special session is set to get underway later today. Pete, if the Chiefs move to Kansas, this is on the text line. What would be the chances that Missouri is able to get a UFL team to play at Arrowhead? Really? Really? Is that, I mean, come on, please. Is that, no.
Each fan gets his own section tonight at the ballpark. Hey, I love UFL and I watch it, but it's BB's in a boxcar at most of the stadiums, man.
Please. What section do you want, John? I'll take 104. Right. I don't know about you.
Might as well go for the 50.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, 101 maybe, 132, something like that, depending on which side you're on. Might as well take the home side while you're at it. Probably get first dibs. Can we not start speculating on UFL teams taking over Arrowhead Stadium? Holy cow. For a stadium that has been so iconic for so many years, that, of course, has housed some of the loudest moments in NFL history, can we not speculate on UFL teams? No.
We did so well with arena football, the Commanders and the Brigade.
Oh, my goodness. Stop. Even Mark hasn't made a peep over there. He knows. That is not something we should be talking about here on the show.
No, we don't need to host the U.S. men's Olympic flag football team here or anything like that.
I'll pass on that one. But I guess it's a nice thought on the text line, I suppose, if you want to go down that road. The Lee Summit Police Department says that a police officer has been shot multiple times late last night on a domestic disturbance call. 3500 block of Southwest Hollywood Drive at about 11 p.m. Police say, as the first officer arrived on scene in the apartment complex, and while waiting for his assisting officer, the officer saw a man running from the scene. The officer chased the suspect on foot advised via the radio that shots had been fired. Police say the officer did not fire any shots, but the officer was struck multiple times. Investigators are working with area law enforcement partners to track down a suspect, reading this from Channel 41. Police say they know the suspect's identity and there is no perceived danger in the area of the original scene. Police saying multiple witnesses gave a statement that the suspect fled the area in a vehicle and the officer has been taken to a local hospital with serious injuries. So that happening in Lee's Summit late last night. And once again, just a reminder, what these cops are dealing with day in, day out, not just obviously in urban cores where, of course, the crime is more likely to be more substantial. It is definitely a more dangerous job. There's no doubt about it. But this was a fairly routine call, domestic disturbance, 11 p.m. on a Sunday night in Lee's Summit. And now you have an officer in the hospital with serious injuries. This is the kind of stuff that most of us, when we wake up and we go to work, we're not thinking about. Right? We're not getting out of bed. I'm not. Trust me. The worst thing I'm worried about here showing up is how are the callers going to be today? Are the callers going to abuse me? What's going to happen here on the show this morning? Are we going to get breaking news? How are we going to handle it? Can we put together a halfway decent show that's informative and hopefully somewhat smart and funny and entertaining? I mean, what do we... And if I walk out of here and I'm like, oh, damn, bad show, I'm not worried about getting shot after responding to a domestic disturbance call. But that's what these law enforcement folks every single day have to have in the back of their mind. And it's why as we sit here, last week was, of course, 5 years after George Floyd got killed, and we had a lot of media attention on the 5-year anniversary. It's like, you know what? Last week was the 5-year anniversary of cops being treated like dirt in not just Kansas City, but around the entire country. And if you want to not celebrate, but if you want to honor the 5-year anniversary of something, that's what we should be honoring and commemorating the 5-year anniversary of. Now, the tide is starting to turn, but it has not turned quickly enough. What would the national conversation look like if over the last 10 days we were talking about a right-wing movement that had murdered 2 foreign diplomats and firebombed kids and elderly people at a peaceful protest in the span of literally 2 weeks? You tell me what the coverage would look like on Meet the Press this weekend. You tell me what PBS would be covering this weekend. Oh, by the way, defund those hucksters. What would the national conversation be in media as we start the week here on a Monday morning? You tell me. And that was the question posed by Guy Benson, who is coming to Kansas City, of course, next week. He will be here for his meet and greet event. We got dinner. I'll be out there. Keatsman will be out there. And there are less than 15 tickets still available at KCMOTalkRadio.com. You can buy them now, but literally under 15 to go until that event is sold out next week at Boulevard. So buy them at KCMOTalkRadio.com. But that was something that Guy Benson put up last night on social media. And he is absolutely spot on. After Kansas lost one of its own, Sarah Milgram, who was shot and killed outside of a museum for no reason other than being Jewish with her boyfriend coming out of a pro-Israel event. And now yesterday, you go out to Boulder, Colorado, where you had a man who was not even supposed to be in the country, came in 2022, firebombing and throwing Molotov cocktails at folks who are just promoting peace and, yes, advocating and lobbying and bringing awareness to those Israelis who are still being held hostage by Hamas. And what ends up happening? You've got this lunatic who is heckling, harassing people, and ends up injuring 8 people. This individual landed in the U.S. at LAX August 27th of 2022 with an authorized stay through February of 23. He then stayed in the country. He filed a claim. He was cleared for work authorization by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services March 29th of 2023. That expired this March, according to the outlet. And what was this guy doing? Well, he was standing shirtless. I mean, he just looks like a wacko, total lunatic. He's standing shirtless in Boulder, Colorado. He's screaming "Free Palestine." And he's blasting makeshift flamethrowers against this crowd that was simply peacefully commemorating Israeli hostages still in Gaza. The FBI has identified this man as Mohammed Sabri Soliman. In the middle of a tirade about Palestine and calling for death to Zionists, he then tossed his homemade incendiary devices and screamed, "They are the killers." "End Zionists," he screamed. As he launched these Molotov cocktails, there are now 8 victims between 52 and 88 years old hospitalized with varying injuries, according to Boulder Police and FBI Denver Special Agent Mark Mikulek. Now, Fox News was first on the reporting yesterday, and here's what they had right out of the gates after this attack ended up taking place.
And we can break to our viewers now, per 3 senior DHS and ICE sources to Fox, according to our colleague Bill Malusian doing some great work, that he is an Egyptian national who is in the U.S. illegally because of a visa overstay who came during the Biden administration. Mohammed Sabri Soliman first flew into the U.S., according to these 3 sources of the DHS and ICE, flew into the U.S. on August of 2022 at LAX. He was authorized to stay through 2023, but never left.
So if we were talking about these 2 major incidents happening, one against 2 completely innocent people, one, of course, Sarah Milgram from right here in Johnson County, Kansas, 2 weeks ago. They get shot dead at about 9 p.m. on a Wednesday night, walking out of an Israeli event by a crazed man who also was screaming about freeing Palestine. And then this happens in Boulder, Colorado. Could you imagine the shoes on the other foot, what the national discourse would be right now in this country? You know and I know. Goodness gracious. Yes, January 6th, embarrassing event. A lot of people should be ashamed about how they handled themselves, but they dragged that. They wanted to make January 6th, 2021, September 11th, 2001. They've been trying to achieve that for over 4 years at this point. Meantime, we have clear political violence driven by one narrative on one side of the political aisle. And what do you get here? Nothing.
Yeah, they were upset with people popping out of U-Haul vans expressing their First Amendment rights, as abhorrent as they are.
Yes.
Right? They were just marching.
You had people last week in Kansas City, of course, that John's referring to. These, I don't know what they were, Patriot Front losers, bunch of guys in masks walking around Kansas City. And yeah, they're total goobers. We're not defending them, but you talk to some people, you would think that's a bigger threat than a guy throwing Molotov cocktails into a group of peaceful protesters.
We're getting to the bottom of this.
Yeah, exactly.
By golly.
So Chris Kobach, Kansas Attorney General, put up a post last night reading the anti-Semitic terrorist attack in Boulder by alleged attacker Soliman is yet another case that hits close to home. It comes on the heels of the recent killing of Kansan Sarah Milgram in D.C. As Kansas's top law enforcement officer, I will do everything in my power to prevent such attacks in Kansas. This has to end. That's from Chris Kobach. Now, Kansas Senate President Ty Masterson also posted this last night. He said, I'm deeply concerned that DHS, that's Department of Homeland Security, has identified Douglas County, Kansas, and Lawrence, of course, Lawrence is in Douglas County, as sanctuary jurisdictions defying federal immigration law. In 2022, we enacted legislation banning sanctuary cities and counties to ensure compliance with federal law. He said, I urge Attorney General Kobach to investigate this matter swiftly. We will hold any Kansas city or county accountable for flouting federal immigration laws and undermining public safety. That is from Kansas Senate President Ty Masterson last night on social media. Now, if that is happening, and he says here that DHS has identified Lawrence as a sanctuary jurisdiction, well, then Kobach's going to have to do something about that. And he's going to have to act swiftly. He can't sit here and just go along to get along when the state has laws on the books. Because if he, and I guarantee you he'll do something about it. I think he will investigate it. But it can't be one of these deals where we just look the other way. Because then what's the point in the state of Kansas passing these laws if nothing will be done about it? Kevin's in Overland Park. Go ahead, Kevin. You're on KCMO.
Hey, Pete. I was just telling John, I was like, we know this stuff is all funded as well and coordinated, and it's like until you cut off the funding, you find the head of the snake and take care of it. This stuff is going to just continue on and on and on. It doesn't matter. They picked, right now it's Free Palestine, anti-Semitism. 5 years ago it's BLM. They foster hatred. They create the narrative for it, and on it goes. And for mainstream media to be basically quiet on it, and for the left side to be basically quiet on it, not saying anything about it. They're in on it too. They're complicit.
Well, they're definitely complicit, Kevin. Thanks so much, my man. They are definitely complicit in not treating this as part of a broader problem of political violence that is largely stemming from one political ideology. Now, was this guy funded by some larger network in Boulder, Colorado? We don't know that yet, but I would like to know who he's been in touch with since he's been in this country. I think that's incredibly important to know. And I'll tell you this much, too. I am so glad that we have the leadership that we have right now in the FBI and in DHS, because they are not going to sweep this one under the rug. I promise you that much. No way. Not a chance. No one has the pulse of this town like the Kansas City Star, right? I mean, sorry. I had to throw it out there. My goodness. So I'm scrolling through some of the local news sites on a Sunday, and this was the top story. Kansas City Star, Jonathan Shorman yesterday. Trump cuts come for Kansas City arts community. A dangerous departure. Okay, arts and danger are usually not two things that you would typically say should be in the same sentence. But when you fearmonger the bejesus out of people and all you've got is a major case of TDS, this is the kind of nonsense you get from your local media. So here's how this article starts. Juan Diego Gosson, an oil painter, moved around his studio on Wednesday afternoon as he prepared for an exhibition at the Mexican consulate in Kansas City. A few doors down, Erin Dodson showed off a jar of dye made from a walnut tree that she's been using to draw. When I think about the critical people of Kansas City, I'm thinking about the men and women in law enforcement. I'm thinking about, the big, successful businesses, major corporations that are headquartered here. I think about the small business owners who are the backbone of Kansas City. And then I think about the lady who is painting using dye made from a walnut tree.
I'm thinking of the generations who find dye from walnut trees plentiful on their cars and have a hell of a time getting that crap off after a season of acclimation. So I don't know that we're going to be running out of that material anytime soon. So hopefully that's not the point.
Well, it's even worse. Gosson and Dodson both hold 2-year residencies at Charlotte Street Foundation, a Kansas City-based organization that supports contemporary artists across the metro. They're one of 30 artists with residences at any given time, a distinction that affords them studio space and a built-in community of fellow artists. President Donald Trump's administration in early May terminated grants to Charlotte Street and a host of other groups across the country awarded by the National Endowment for Arts, or NEA. Charlotte Street lost $25,000 in federal support that helps fund residencies like the ones enjoyed by Gosson and Dodson and other aid for area artists. Okay, we're $36 trillion in debt. We should not be funding artists in Kansas City who are showing off a jar of dye made from a walnut tree.
He's a nut job.
That is not what we should be doing, literally and figuratively. Nut jobs. This is not the business that the federal government needs to be in. And if we had halfway decent and honest people in our government for the last few years, we'd all be on the same page. But not only is it bad enough that people are writing stories about this in Kansas City media at a time when the newspaper is a shell of what it used to be. This is what they feature as a headline story in this town. Imagine being Jonathan Shorman, who wrote the article, and I saw him on Nick Haynes' show, Week in Review. I mean, at some point, you got to put your foot down and tell the bosses, I'm not doing this. I'm not writing about walnut artists and how democracy is at stake unless we fund Charlotte Street to the tune of $25,000 for a walnut artist. The story goes on to write here. The residency has been an enormous blessing for me, said Dodson, adding that she estimates renting similar studio space would cost $600 a month. Okay, I mean, in America, it's a beautiful place. If you have a skill set that allows you to make money, which then you can turn into a business, you have every right and every ability in America in 2025 to do it. If you can't, it is not on the government to bail you out. It is not in the government to pay for your studio space to show off a jar of dye made from a walnut tree. That literally, I can't think of anybody. Even Aaron Dobson's parents are probably like, would you get a job, please? Could you put yourself to use, please? What are we doing here? And then for the Star to give a platform to this, like the city's going to come to a freaking end if this art organization is not properly funded. Oh, my goodness, spare me. NEA grant cuts threaten to tear at Kansas City's arts and culture community, where federal support, ripping away,
ripping and tearing. Slashing.
Jeez, guys,
gouging.
This is just comical. This is so pathetic and so embarrassing, even by their standards. The NEA cuts also come after the National Endowment for the Humanities has made reductions, along with the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Charlotte Street and arts organizations across the country began receiving emails on May 2nd informing them that their grants had been canceled. The emails appeared to contain similar messages, with each saying the endowment was, quote, updating its grant-making policy priorities to focus on funding on projects that reflect the nation's rich artistic heritage and creativity as prioritized by the president. Trump's budget proposal calls for eliminating the National Endowment for the Humanities, the NEA, and the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Great. You know, if the Kansas City City Council wants to pick up the tab, I think that would be also a massive waste of taxpayer monies, but if they want to do it, so be it. They can do it on their own time. In the meantime, that's not the job of the federal government. This is an utter embarrassment we were even funding this to begin with.
Every time you see a headline, administration slashes, rips apart, tears away, just sub in the word saves money.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what it really means. That's code.
Oh, the text line. Pete, I hear that shucking walnut husk is paying about $600 a month. That's well done. On the text line. 913-4087-957. Also on the text line, Pete, my eBay sales have been slow lately. I wonder if the government will help me out with some items to sell. Well, it depends what you're selling. I mean, you know, it is the start of Pride Month after all, so if you're selling something along those lines, at least if the other guys were in power, they would have maybe bailed you out on some of your eBay items. But I can't speak to anything else.
Got a couple of books for you.
Yeah, thank you very much there, Bernie. I appreciate that.
Nobody cares.
But, you know, there's always a time and place for when you can try to fleece the government. And thankfully, that time is not now. We are not at that point in American history where if you were taking advantage of a federal government that was not paying attention one bit to what it was spending, well, that time is over. Not saying they're still not wasting money. Trust me, they are. They're absolutely still wasting money. But at least they're trying to figure out a way to cut some of the fat. And if nothing else, that's a great start. Some of you want something to chew on the national political scene. We got a lot going on here, of course, in the Kansas City region, but I'll give you something to chew on here. We haven't done something like this yet today on KCMO, so I will get right to it. There was a poll over the weekend that some of you are doing cartwheels over. I got a lot of DMs on this on Facebook and X and whatnot, but I'm actually going to defend the Democrat side of this for a second here. Follow me. First, I'm going to play the commentary from CNN on some recent polling they did over the weekend and why it's really not as bad as even, frankly, the CNN commenters are making it out to be.
Sort of see the parties. Which party is better described as the party with strong leaders? Look at this.
Wow.
16% of Americans say Democrats, 40% say that of the Republican Party. Now, overall, no party's doing great. Lots of Americans say neither of these qualities apply to either party. But look at how much worse off the Democrats are. A party that gets things done. Only 19% of Americans say that about the Democrats. 36% say it about the Republicans. In fact, the only place that the Democrats are numerically ahead, party of the middle class, this is basically a tie, though.
Yeah.
34% say that of Democrats, 32% say that of Republicans. But this, I think, is the most fascinating. How do partisans talk about their own party? Right? So among Democrats and Democratic leaners, 32% say Democrats are the party with strong leaders. I mean, of their own kind, right? 82% of Republican leaders say that about the GOP. Only 41% of Democrats say they're the party that gets things done of their own kind. And I will just say, 51%, Manu, a majority of Democratic and Democratic leaners say neither party gets the party that gets things done attribute. Imagine that's the project that Democrats are working on.
Yeah.
Okay, so that commentary was from CNN over the weekend. And the main headline number here is that when it comes to which party is better described as the party with strong leaders, Republicans have a 40% to 16% edge in that category. Republicans getting things done, 36% versus 19% for the Democrats. Well, this is not as bad as even some Republicans are making it out to be. Of course, the party that has no power right now is viewed as the party that gets absolutely nothing done. There is nothing for them to get done. Half the country didn't vote for him, doesn't like him. And then within your own party, when you're the party out of power, you view your own party as a bunch of losers. It's that simple. This is not the big win that some Republicans are making it out to be when it comes to their prospects in 2026 or their popularity right now. Now, listen, everyone knows where I stand and who my guys and gals are in this political battle on a national level. But looking at this and saying, oh, boy, we're in great shape. No, Democrats are down on their luck. They have no power in D.C., so naturally, they don't think that their armed party is filled with strong leaders, and they don't think that they're the party that's getting things done because they don't have any power to get things done.
Yeah, the girl that you want to ask to prom smiled at you. Victory, small one, fleeting, but a victory.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So I'm not like, I saw this and I'm like, okay, But Hakeem Jeffries, he is the minority leader in the House. He was asked about this by Dana Bash on CNN and said this.
And just 16% say your party has strong leaders. It's pretty rough, and you are one of those leaders. How do you turn that around?
Yeah, we don't have the presidency right now, so that's always going to be challenging a few months after a presidential election. But we have to continue to make the case, one, that Democrats, of course, are the party that is determined to make life more affordable for everyday Americans, for hardworking American taxpayers. That we believe that we...
Yeah, this is a little SNL there from Hakeem Jeffries. Like, he had an opportunity to just say, hey, we're not in power. People are down in the dumps. This is why we got to win back in 26. And, we're going to be in a much better shape in this poll. That's all he's got to say. And actually, I would have had his back on that because I think that's the reality and how you actually interpret a poll like this. You don't interpret a poll like this and say, oh, man, Republicans are going to be in power forever. Nothing's stopping us. Come on, it's America. It's American politics. This stuff ebbs and flows every 2 years. Just let's live in reality world here, okay? But then Hakeem Jeffries goes down this road, and please, give me more of this, Hakeem. party of keeping prices in check? Oh, my goodness.
Oh, yeah. They love taunting us with the egg price thing,
Yeah,
right?
gosh.
That's how much in tune they were.
Was I in a coma from 21 to 24?
Need to lower the high cost of living, which for decades has been going up while the size of the middle class has been going down. So understandably, there's real frustration amongst the American people. They should be frustrated.
But they're
Housing
frustrated
costs are
with
too
you
high.
as well,
Child
with
care costs-
Democrats as well.
Of course, they're frustrated with the system.
Yeah, which you were in charge of for 4 years until this guy, Trump came back and had to come back for the ages. I'm not sure I'd be going down the price road. But here's what it also tells me. What it tells me is that we have very short-term memories in this country. And if Trump is not perceived to be the guy that got prices, at least in part, under control, then his party's going to lose next year. It's how this goes. Right or wrong, whether you say he's getting enough wiggle room, enough runway to work with, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's going to flip back. That's why it's crucial that Trump not lose sight of that here. I know he's doing a lot of things, and obviously the vast majority of them I find myself in agreement with. A lot of them are things that obviously he ran on. But come next year, people will either reward him and his party or reject them based on largely how they feel their own economic situation is going. That's what happened last year. It's not overcomplicated. That's what happened.